Hello and welcome to Blockchain All-Star Series. I'm your host, Layla Gulen. Blockchain and distributed ledger technology are at the forefront of the Internet 3.0 era, where the technology can enable trusted and transparent sharing of data and digital assets. Though the technology is still at its early stage, who makes up the constellation of innovators guiding us through the digital revolution powered by blockchain? Well, we'd like to introduce you to our guest. Jehan Chu is founder and managing partner at Kenetic, a blockchain venture capital and cryptocurrency trading firm based in Hong Kong. Jehan Chu is a Bitcoin investor and founding member of the Bitcoin Association of Hong Kong and founder of the Ethereum HK Meetup Group. He is also a huge believer in art and NFTs. Jehan, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks so much for having me, Leila. It's a pleasure to be here.
So starting off, when would you say you bought your first Bitcoin?
I actually got into Bitcoin around late 2013, and it was around that time, late 13, early 14, that I bought my first Bitcoin. And interestingly, I, like many others of my generation, there weren't really a lot of options to buy Bitcoin back then. And so many of us had our first experience buying Bitcoin on a peer-to-peer site called Local Bitcoins. And oddly enough, I bought my first Bitcoin from Arthur Hayes, who was the founder of BitMEX. And it was kind of an interesting experience because, Arthur at that time had just come out of Deutsche Bank. And, this is way before he built his multi-billion-dollar, kind of BitMEX company. Back then, it was just a bunch of guys who were really interested in the future of, digital finance and the future of money. And we happened to connect. And so that was my first Bitcoin. I believe I bought my first Bitcoin at around $900, which at the time was near the first peak of around $1,200. So it seemed quite expensive at the time. As we've seen, it then dropped all the way to $200, which was kind of a scary roller coaster ride. But me and my kind of naivety and foolishness, I continued buying all the way down to $200. So I think the cheapest Bitcoin that I bought was around $210 during that crash. Fortunately, the price has kind of gone up since then, and I'm happy that I didn't lose sight of the goal at that time.
Well, sometimes naivete it pays off, doesn't it? Well, you wear a lot of different hats. You're an investor, a blockchain advocate, a highly accomplished art collector. Who would you say you identify most with?
Well, I'm not sure I'm a highly accomplished art collector. I would say that I'm a highly enthusiastic art collector. I have been collecting art since around 2006. And actually, the first piece I bought was from a friend of mine who was a struggling photographer in New York at the time. Since then, I've amassed a decently sized collection ranging from contemporary Western art, contemporary Asian art, with a strong presence of local contemporary Hong Kong art. The likes of people like Chris Hune and Lee Kitt, and even historical figures like the King of Kowloon, who was arguably the first street artist in the world writing Chinese calligraphy in the 1950s in Hong Kong, and he's been the subject of many kind of historical studies. It's hard for me to pick one role because actually I don't think there's a big difference between them. A lot of people, when I made the move from my 8-year history as an art dealer, when I suddenly jumped over to being a crypto VC, a lot of people, kind of felt it was a bit jarring and they didn't understand how I could make that jump. But actually, for me, it was very seamless. The idea in as an art advisor is that I'm supporting young artists, I'm supporting emerging artists. I'm helping collectors to really get a sense of how to understand difficult abstract concepts in a way which is approachable, and they can ascribe both personal value as well as financial value from an investment standpoint into these assets. If I just move that over to crypto, it's kind of the same thing, except that instead of supporting artists, I'm supporting founders, people who are developing, the cutting edge startups and companies that form the basis of the future of technology. And I'm trying to explain what they do to other investors and try to get other investors in and guide them. So for me, actually, I've always been doing the same thing, which is look at, relatively early cutting edge abstract ideas and try to support them, have conviction, invest in them, get other people excited about them. So I would say that I've pretty much been doing the same thing for the past, I would say 2008 until now, so about the past 13 years.
Wow. Well, it's a very interesting philosophy that you have on things. And I am curious what your day-to-day looks like between art collecting and appreciating those things in life, and then also working in Bitcoin and as a VC. So what is a day-to-day like for you, Jehan?
Yeah, it depends on the season. I mean, I have to say with the bull and bear markets in crypto, it can be pretty hectic. Typically these days, now that we're in a semi bull, semi bear market, somewhere in between, I have a little bit more time, but my day typically starts off at around 7:30 when I wake up, and I usually have my first call. I wish I was one of those people that, would wake up at 6 and, get my meditation in and get my kind of Pilates in, but I'm not. I'm the opposite. I wake up about 20 minutes before my first call. I roll out of bed. I try to get ready as quickly as possible, get my face on. And then I'm usually typically 1 or 2 minutes late to my first call, which, is not a great way to start the day. So I'm a bit of a wreck. But that's when I really start to get into it. I love talking to people. I love talking to founders. I see my meetings as, kind of an expression of helping me think through my day. And that's where I really get to play. So I don't mind meetings. I don't mind taking them in the morning, at night. And it starts like that. I'll do my first maybe 2 or 3 meetings from home, try to get some tea and, feed the cat, hang out with the girlfriend. And then I'll go into the office and I'll do more meetings. And then I will typically try and get to my email, which is always a disaster. So typically I have anywhere, from, 1 to 300 emails per day which basically go unread, because I just love doing meetings. Ideally, what I should do as I'm, talking through this is I should set aside time to do my email, but I never do that. I just love talking to people. So I usually roll out of the office, go home, cook some dinner, and then I will just continue on meetings until around 10, 11, sometimes as late as 11:30 or 12. So that's typically my day. And I'll do that 6 days a week, 5 or 6 days a week.
Kind of bounce off of what you were just saying. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, do you ever have time to disconnect? Do you ever disconnect?
My therapist asks me the same thing. And the answer is no, I don't really disconnect. Because for me, I don't really have I don't have a separation between work and life. And I don't really think of it as work. I know that sounds a bit hokey, but I really love what I do. And I get energy from it. So it doesn't occur as work. It just occurs as expression, and occurs as service and support. And, it's not like an adrenaline sport where I'm looking for that next hit. It's more like a flow state. So I don't like to disconnect because I want to continue doing the things that make me happy. And, for me, supporting companies and thinking of new ideas and, being of service to the industry, and really trying to drive blockchain in all its different forms and help people understand it and become comfortable. That's fun to me. If I was rock climbing, I guess that would be fun too. But I think that, the next greatest company and helping them, make some of these mental leaps to their next, unlock, that's also more fun.
It's an essential rock climb in its own right, I guess you could say. Now, you were born and raised in the U.S. You now live in Hong Kong. What made you decide to move back to Hong Kong? Where did you grow up in the U.S.?
So I was born and raised in New Jersey, which is a really beautiful kind of place. And after that, I moved to Hong Kong for about three years when I was a kid. So I went to international school here, and then I moved back to the U.S. For middle school, high school, all the way through my adult life until I was about 27 or 28. And it was Sotheby's. I was working for Sotheby's auction house at the time, and they were expanding their Hong Kong office. And so they moved me back out here. And I've just been here ever since. I've been in Hong Kong for about 15 years. And I can't imagine a better place. I mean, all of the kind of challenges, through COVID and, the different types of, kind of political unrest, it's been challenging. But at the same time, I think Hong Kong has this amazing energy and resilience. And it has such a strong character of its own, that there's really no other place that I would rather be. There's incredible, kind of infrastructure here. It's so, open in many ways. You can go from, beach to mountain to ocean, to urban, dense urban, in a matter of minutes. And that really suits my maybe short attention span personality. But I like that. I like that switching. I like having to constantly recalibrate, the differences, and I like the diversity. So I think Hong Kong is an amazing place. It's the center of blockchain for Asia. And I think that, we're really privileged to be able to kind of help build its infrastructure.
Well, you certainly sound like quite the self-starter. Would you say that you had any mentors or role models growing up and carrying you through to where you are today?
I wish that I could say that I had mentors. Definitely there's people in my life that I'm grateful to for having contributed everything from, guidance and advice and insight. But to be frank, I've never had that, kind of one-to-one, apprentice type of, mentor, apprentice role. But my close friends and have been, so critical in helping me develop as a person. There are certain programs that I've gone through that I think have been, extremely formative, like Vipassana meditation has really helped me, develop myself. And I think, one group in particular that's been very impactful is something called the Kauffman Fellows Program, which is a 25-year-old venture capital network with about 600 global alumni, which trains venture capitalists not only to be better investors, but to be better people. And so my friends and my colleagues, I've learned enormous amounts from them. And I like to believe that, and because I think it's true, that I'm probably the dumbest person in that group, which is great because I love learning from all of them. They're such accomplished investors. They're so great at, kind of being self-actualized. So I would say the Kauffman Fellows Program has been in some ways a great guide for me.
That's very interesting. Would you say that there's one entrepreneur? I mean, you mentioned this group of people, but would you say that there's any particular one entrepreneur that has been a good example for you to follow? Or do you think you've kind of carved out your own path?
For sure, there have been a number of entrepreneurs, especially in our portfolio, that I highly respect. I mean, of course, I love all my children, but a few that stick out that I've learned certain things from. There's a gentleman named Jehan Chu, who is the founder of Kabam, which was a near $1 billion exit. And we invested in a company of his called Rally, which is social tokens. His, focus, his execution, and how he just operates, playing multidimensional chess at a very high level. I've learned so much from him about what a great serial entrepreneur looks like. So he's definitely one that stands out. And then one of my very close friends is a guy named Roman Khan, who was ex-Rocket Internet and founded a number of companies, including Raycon Global and Linear. He is always someone that I've looked at as just incredibly execution-oriented and focused. And I think that for me, I tend to be much more creative and much more loose and less structured. That my superpower is being able to, bring disparate ideas together. My superpower, my kryptonite is definitely the execution and the focus side. So I really respect people like Roman, who, over a decade have just been able to stay laser focused and just with, almost ruthless intensity in terms of their execution. That really, gives me something to kind of aspire to without obviously giving up my particular, superpowers. I definitely think that I learned from them.
Very interesting. And you've recently invested in Red Date Technology, the company behind the BSN project. Can you share with us what struck you about them, why you decided to invest?
With any early stage investor like us, you develop a bit of pattern recognition over, the course of the 190 or so companies that we've invested in our history. One of the most important things that any investor, early stage investor will tell you is that ultimately you're investing in the team and you're investing in the people. And, in a late stage company, you can invest in numbers, you can invest in infrastructure and size and markets, et cetera. But when you're investing at the beginning, it's always about the people because everything else is mutable, but the people are the constants. So it was actually Yifan He, the founder of Red Date, which was the real clincher. Speaking to him within 30 minutes, I knew that this was someone that I wanted to work with and someone that I wanted to invest in. And that if anybody could change the face of technology globally, and that's not an overstatement, it would actually be him. He's had a remarkable ability to bring together parties that are just kind of unimaginable in terms of collaboration and partnerships to attack one of the largest surfaces in the world, which is blockchain infrastructure, not at the protocol level, but really at the base systems level. And his ability to bring together both, state-owned enterprises and large enterprise and institutions, NGOs, as well as government and government organizations I've never seen it before in the world. And I think that he's been able to thread the needle in a way which is just really breathtaking. So for me, it was really just investing in him and his ability, and of course his execution as well. And I think his integrity and his humility were other factors that just made me feel comfortable that even with all of the risk, even with all of the uncertainty about different types of environments, his kind of perseverance and his kind of pragmatic nature and humility would help him navigate through all these different types of currents. And so far that's been true, knock on wood.
Now, this whole industry, blockchain and art, I'd like to talk a little bit more about how the two worlds have crashed together to form NFT. Can you tell us a little bit more about this for anybody who's not familiar with that part of the industry? Sure.
So an NFT stands for non-fungible token. And an NFT is really a capsule. You can think of it as like a capsule in which you can put anything. In the case of art and content and design NFTs, or even music, you can take that digital capsule, this smart contract capsule, and you can put in, let's say, a digital image like, an artwork. And it could be a JPEG, anything which is kind of digitally constructed. And so what you have then is a piece of art which is, encapsulated in a smart contract. Now, of course, we have JPEGs. Everybody, sends around JPEGs, but JPEGs aren't scarce. There's no difference between your JPEG and if I press Control-C and copy your JPEG, my JPEG. They're exactly the same. There's no way you can tell the difference. But with NFTs, that smart contract layer allows you to basically seal that image and that JPEG and create a unique and basically mathematically provably unique wrapper, where then I can then say, this one is different and this one will always be different and it's identifiably different. And I can give it to you and I can transfer it to you and you can tell the difference between this NFT and this JPEG. So if you take that at scale, what NFTs do is that they allow us to finally have true digital scarcity of intellectual property on the internet. We no longer need external validators or auditors. We don't need like necessarily a PwC or someone who needs to have their own proprietary or centralized registry. The blockchain itself can keep the things track of what's unique. And so that's really what an NFT is. Now it's come to a certain phenomenon where this huge art boom with Beeple, who's a close friend of mine, that one of the most popular, most famous NFT artist, sold his NFT for $69 million at Christie's, of which I'm an advisor of Christie's as well. That really broke open the public understanding and the media attention on this whole field, which then in turn got so many artists and creatives looking at the space and realizing that there are opportunities for themselves to create their own NFTs and really, actualize some self-publishing. And so I think NFTs have been an incredible phenomenon just to support creators, especially digital creators. And the thing that I love most about NFTs is that it doesn't really matter where you are. You could be in, rural Uganda. And if you have a computer or even a phone, you can publish your own NFT and you can sell it to a collector in New York. So it creates this not only access of intellectual property and creative property, it really creates opportunity for people globally to connect over culture. And anybody can become a collector. There are so many collectors now who never think of themselves as collectors. Maybe they have a $10 NFT. Maybe they have, some kind of $20 or $25 piece of artwork. Now they're a collector. Now they're engaged with culture. Now they're having a dialogue with the artist. And it's just been this remarkable, expansion of culture and collectability, which I think is great. We should have more culture.
But for this to become more commonplace, how far off in the distance would you say that that's going to happen?
I actually think it's already happening. We're starting to see the largest investors in the world, the Andreessen Horowitzes and Sequoias and, benchmarks, as well as, even much larger, companies which have, $50 billion under management, like Coatue and Tiger, starting to invest in critical NFT infrastructure. So I think it's only a matter of time before the general public has, the ease of access to NFTs. So I would give it maybe 2 years before everybody, your grandmother will have her own NFT, just, maybe of you, maybe of the cat, maybe of her favorite, kind of television show. It will be pretty common.
It's amazing how these things move at light speed. I'm curious for you yourself, your future plans. Where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 5 to 10 years?
I think in 10 years, I'll still be waking up at, 7:10 for a 7:30 call. And I'll be doing maybe, 6 or 7 calls in the morning, and then, taking a break for lunch. Hopefully I'll be working out a bit more, and just go on this way. I mean, I can't imagine a better life other than, having more family. Family is always kind of important. But I really, take a lot of energy from being of service to the industry and, just thinking of different ways that this technology can impact society and culture and government and finance. And so my wish for myself is that, I'm doing exactly what I'm doing and then have a family, and that would be, pretty ideal life.
It sounds like a pretty balanced life. Investments, though, how about as far as investments go? Certainly in your own personal life, it sounds like you want to place more time and effort into that arena. But in terms of your business and investments, what do you think?
I mean, we are in the fortunate position that we are one of the earliest and most active investors in blockchain and crypto in Asia. And fortunately, even through multiple market cycles, we've been able to maintain our brand and maintain our position as one of the go-to supporters of blockchain. So I think that we'll continue on that path. We want to continue to support our startups, just like Red Date, and help them grow into really the Facebooks and the Alibabas of the next generation. We think that that's really what we're dealing with. So the best that we can do is just continue to identify good founders, good companies, and support them until, they eventually change the world.
Well, it sounds like you could actually write a book about your entire life. Do you think that's something that you'd ever want to do?
I think I can have someone ghostwrite a book. The idea that I would sacrifice my calls to write a book is unlikely, but I think it would be an honor for someone to write a book, about me or that I would contribute to. But it's certainly a great idea.
Well, Jehan, I've learned so much from you. It's been fascinating speaking with you. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule to join us today. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Layla. Thank you so much.
All right. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn, or subscribe for us on the link below.